Flimsy Windows Creative. Julian Phillips with Tom Luong. October 10, 2018. The Cobalt Migration. Chapter 17. All rights reserved. 43 years later, 3 days beyond the meridian orbital path intersect, and about 2 hours into the Martian daylight hours, Barry Corso was at the Snicta Ridge Mars base. The base was the oldest and largest on Mars, but her residence was at the smaller Yellowknife community, some distance away. And on Mars, at that time, even 20 or 30 miles could sometimes be an impossible journey, with death in the cold, thin air. A 100-year plan was in place to generate a planetary atmosphere, but it was quite slow, and involved oxygen-scrubbing bacteria that could survive the cold conditions and strange soil qualities, as well as the use of water. Water that arrived from the second-largest moon of Jupiter, Io, in container ships almost half a mile long, as ice. And the journey to Jupiter in those vessels could be 2 years in process. The distance from Earth at favorable orbit was 700 million miles. But for her, the certainty of the large ships at great distances was similar perhaps to a superliner passenger jet, in the time of life of her grandfather, Charles Lincoln Corso. Charles Lincoln married Linda Hayes, and they begat Adam Lincoln, who later loved a deep space navigator, a woman, during a tragic and dangerously delayed mission to the very distant Pluto. The team was stranded at Pluto with an impossible situation, for more than a year, in deep caves sustained only by fierce standard space travel ships' equipment, never intended to keep them alive in that way. Adam's firstborn of the woman Cassie, a navigator, happened in the deepest darkness. There half a mile within the caverns they knew were there, at the planet Pluto. The girl was born, Barry Corso, and this during a 7-year journey that was originally set for 7 months. But by the 7th year, Barissa found her way to the Jupiter bases, and then years later to Mars, as a young adult woman well versed in space travel means. Now her home was at Yellowknife, and she loved it there. Travel to the Snicta Ridge base for her was in service to work on a troublesome agricultural problem. So you have never really seen many plants, then, Barissa? Said Qualry, the assigned matron, who was friends with Barissa, and also working on her migration to Mars, and even someday to Earth.
For Barissa, perhaps more so than anyone she had ever met or known, something like the normal flora and fauna of a normal Earth home was almost magical. Her birthplace was much as she herself, distant, darkness accented with the glow of liquid silver, hardened by a billion years and a billion more years, the nothingness all around, cold. And she no planet or constellation of stars. Barissa was a woman of a delightful humanity, at appearances. She was only seldom questioned about her origins, given that space travel by then, about year 2082 AD, was more normal to their thinking. But her thoughts about plants, not to mention animals, portrayed a girl from Pluto, who no one would ever really know, but her own self. And that of course was rather lonely for her. Plants? She responded, typically curious and alert. Do you mean implants? Like surgically implanted metal devices that serve parts of the body? The two of them had arrived by then, from the upper and lower tunnel decks, and over the bare and naked sand roads, with small bridges and paths for the electric carts they used, and they then passed into the Snicta base guest plaza, inside, safe from the non-air, non-survivable surface of planet Mars. There were many other staff workers, with many routine tasks, including research and exploration, and most importantly, the Mars base environmental sustain. Well, I was meaning plants, such as trees, or tomatoes, or onions, or seaweed. Quality said. What is seaweed? Barissa said. The matron Quality was assigned to review the history of the residents at the Mars base, from genealogy, and also at a deeper, DNA level, and also their training, skills, education, past performance, assignments, clearances, and more. even, much more. In Berisa Corso's case, her task included a review of this young woman's family, back to Earth, back to Adam Corso on Pluto, back to her grandfather Charles Lincoln, and then even further. Seaweed is a plant that grows along the shores of the salty oceans of Earth. She answered. Sometimes it occurred to her that Berisa was smarter than she let on about such a thing as seaweed. Surely she had seen pictures in books or on the vids. At the same time, Berisa would be employed to work at the Snicta Ridge base, for that day, doing a technology review of water systems, related to growing indoor plants at the base. This also was routine. There was some concern the water was tainted with chemicals from old seals that had become worn out, and needed to be replaced. It was the type of thing that she was fairly good at, so she and her guide, the matron, in her long gowns and remote control everything, herself a wonder, and also sometimes overly fond of red wine from Earth, when she could get it. I know what seaweed is, Berisa answered, as the elevator arrived to take them to their stations at different levels within the base. 2 other staff workers joined them in the lift, which was wide enough to carry large items, and operated on a superconductor anti-gravity rail, only recently installed. I was just testing you. To see if you knew. The elevator doors enclosed around the 4 of them. There was a hum and glowing digital controls. The 2 others who had joined them were a man and a woman, apparently on a medical team, of which there were many. Level 4, 6, and 12, please, Quallery said. There was an awkward movement to their bodies upwards. Thank you, said the man, of the 2 medical workers. You'll pardon me, then, Berisa, Quallery said. My assumption is that nothing at all can grow on Pluto, such as plants, or seaweed, or anything green and growing naturally, from organic water, like vines or grapes or trees. Another long moment. Excuse me, the man in the medical smock said. You are from Pluto? Berisa stiffened, as if the elevator had now become a trap. But not a danger. Only another socially difficult situation for her. Whenever she heard the question she loathed what usually followed, and felt like an outsider. Yes, Berisa said. I am. The lift doors to level 4 opened as the machine elevator stopped. Quallery would exit there, to her research, all on computers, some connected to long-distance computer archive libraries on Earth, and at various space stations in between. See you at the 6th hour, dear Madame Corso, she said, then seemed only to float away into the level 4 complex.
Plants and animals, oceans and weeds. What had become of them? Had you ever seen a star, blazing a million times hotter than your thoughts about it, but not ever a starfish, not ever an ocean wave? Not ever a sandy shore, not ever a cloudy sky, not ever a muscle beach bikini contest or hot dog and hamburger with fries and a Coke, watching the sunset and seagulls? They each went their way, for 48 hours of assigned highly skilled labor, just for them all to survive. And people would ask her, are you really from Pluto? What was it like? But Berisa had only just begun to wonder about her grandfather Charles Lincoln, and about his father, Philip S. Corso, the Warren military commander, and then his wife, the Japanese flower girl, and then into the mysterious hidden loss of all reason and consciousness, abducted by aliens. Her great-great-grandmother, in a land called Japan, which to her may as well have been Disneyland or the Land of Oz. Namast.
The world and all its plants and animals was waiting.
The world and all its plants and animals was waiting. Siddiq Simimim.